Season, the Maple Ridge Rocket flies around the racetrack at more than 200 miles an hour. Now, usually Greg Moore emerges without a scratch. It's ironic that Moore would be putting along on his motor scooter when he would fall off and break his hand.
On the way to morning practice this morning, and just come out of my coach on the way up, and I was on my motor scooter, and I was going along probably 10 or 12 miles an hour, something like that, and someone was coming at me in a pickup truck, and I guess she decided to turn into a parking spot where I was occupying at the time, and she hit the bike, and I went down, and unfortunately when I didn't want to hit my head, so I put my hand out on the ground, and I've broken a bone inside my hand.
233 miles an hour.
On to qualifying, where Dario Franchitti held a 9-point lead over Juan Montoya for the car championship title. Scott Pruitt battled the Santa Ana winds to grab the early pole with a speed of 235.3 miles per hour. Franchitti won't catch him, qualifying 8th with a speed of 232.9 miles per hour. And that left the door open for Montoya to take the pole and gain the all-important point on Franchitti. But Montoya comes up just short, qualifying 3rd behind Pruitt and Max Pappas, who posted a speed of 234.2 miles per hour. So here's the starting grid for the Marlboro 500, and we will have the race live on TSN Sunday afternoon beginning at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific.
The racing season could be over for Greg Moore. On Saturday, Moore was involved in a bizarre accident. He was on his motor scooter when he was hit by a car. Now, fortunately, all he suffered was a broken finger. A decision will be made on Sunday on whether or not Moore will drive in the Marlboro 500.
On the way to morning practice this morning, and just come out of my coach on the way up, and I was on my motor scooter, and I was going along probably 10 or 12 miles an hour, something like that, and someone was coming at me in a pickup truck, and I guess she decided to turn into a parking spot where I was occupying at the time, and she hit the bike, and I went down, and unfortunately when I didn't want to hit my head, so I put my hand out on the ground, and I've broken a bone inside my hand.
233 miles an hour.
Let's get to qualifying. Dario Franchitti has a 9-point lead over Juan Montoya for the overall championship title. Scott Pruitt had the pole with a speed of 235.3 miles an hour. Franchitti could not catch him on Saturday. He qualified 8th with a speed of 232.9 miles an hour. Now that left the door wide open for Montoya to take the pole and gain a very important point. But Montoya comes up short. He qualified 3rd behind Pruitt and Max Pappas with a speed of 234.2 miles an hour. So Greg Moore will be reevaluated Sunday morning to determine if he can race. Now, if he can, he will start in 27th place. As far as Scott Pruitt is concerned, he captured his 2nd straight pole. Dario Franchitti is in 8th place.
A tragic crash today in the final kart race of the year in Fontana, California, the Marlboro 500. Canadian driver Greg Moore is dead at the age of 24. And just before we roll the video, viewer discretion is advised. This was the final race of the year on the kart circuit. Greg Moore, starting from the final position because of a freak accident yesterday, broke a forefinger, and here on the 10th lap, he skidded into the infield grass and crashed into a retaining wall. The car broke into pieces. Moore suffered massive head and internal injuries, and he was pronounced dead at 1:21 Pacific time. Greg Moore was just 24 years old. Greg Moore is dead at the age of 24. He was killed today when his car skidded off the track on lap number 10. After the race, the drivers reacted to the terrible news.
He just swore. He just made a large obscenity in Italian.
What did he say?
We have our top 3 today for the Marlboro 500 presented by Toyota. I usually go down each driver and ask them for general comments. We'll skip that session today, and we'll open for questions following a statistic on each. Finishing 3rd today was Christian in the big Kmart Ford Swift on Firestones. It's his 5th podium of the season, his 3rd on an oval. It's his 5th top 8 finish in the last 6 starts. Runner-up today was Max in the Miller Lite Ford Renard on Firestones. It matches his career best, which was 2nd at Australia. He closes the season with his 4th consecutive top 4 finish. The Marlboro 500 presented by Toyota champion is Adrian in the Tecate Quaker State Patrick Ford Renard on Firestones. His margin of victory, 7.634 seconds. It's his second win of the season. His other was at Japan. It's his 5th career win, first on a 500-miler, and he receives a $1 million payday. We'll open for questions. Gordon.
Adrian, this is a very tough day for everyone. Could you speak about Greg? I wonder if all three of you could just say a few words about Greg as your friend and competitor.
It's just it's so hard because Greg was such a good friend of us. We've been racing for a while, and we have shared so many good moments inside and outside the racetrack. And this is a tragedy for all of us. And I can't express you how sad I feel. The win, it doesn't matter anything. My heart goes to his dad. Which I think he is hurting a lot right now. And we should support his family right now because it's such a difficult time for them. And I will remember Greg as a great gentleman, great friend, and a fantastic race car driver.
Nate. We'll start with Max. Max, your comments on
What do you want to know?
You'd like to know.
He is up there in the sky, and we just these are messages that God sent to us. I'm so sad. There is no word. There is nothing. There is nothing that no satisfaction will pay this back. But we need to understand why things happen, and. Now my prayer are with Rick and all Greg's family. And as Adrian said, Greg was a special person in and out of the track. And there is no word. You just have to understand why things happen and don't accept them.
We'll have more at the top of the clock. Stay with us.
because of a freak accident yesterday. Broke a forefinger, and here on the 10th lap, he skidded into the infield grass and crashed into a retaining wall. The car broke into pieces. Moore suffered massive head and internal injuries, and he was pronounced dead at 1:21 Pacific time. Greg Moore was just 24 years old.
First, I want to thank everyone. I'm really sad what happened to Greg. I think he was a great guy. I'm really sorry for his family and friends, you know. I could say he was one of the nicest guys around here. So it's a really big shame. It's a big loss for Card and for everyone.
I think everybody that's ever driven one of these cars can tell you that maybe he's just not burdened with things anymore, you know, and not going to worry about these senseless things that we do, worrying about shock absorbers and wings and rules and fights, and, you know, our sport seems, I think, fairly insignificant in times like this.
Just let me introduce everyone. Andrew Craig, chairman of CART. Next to him, Dr. Greg Bauman with California or Penske Speedways. Next to him is Dr. Steve Olvey, who's medical director for CART. And on the end is Scott Atherton, who's president of California Speedway. At this point, I'll turn it over to Andrew, to Steve, who will start us off, and we'll go from there.
As everybody is aware now, Greg Moore succumbed to the injuries sustained in the crash earlier this afternoon. He died from massive head injuries and other associated internal injuries. A large resuscitative effort was attempted at Loma Linda Hospital after he was airlifted there, and those attempts were unsuccessful because of the extent of the injuries.
Okay, Steve. Andrew?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, obviously on behalf of championship auto racing teams and everybody involved in our sport, our entire family, obviously a day which we traditionally, for us is traditionally a day of celebration, is now a day of tragedy and a day of sadness. I can only express our deepest condolences to Greg and to his family. I've actually just returned from the hospital where I met with Greg's parents and with his girlfriend, and I can only tell you that they are displaying remarkable resolve and strength at a time which quite clearly is absolutely devastating for them as a family. I have passed on the condolence of everybody in our sport, and I hope I was representing everybody in this room. I'm sure I am, in passing on our condolences to the family at a time of great sadness. The family will return to Vancouver tonight. Joe Forsythe was there, of course, making all the arrangements, and everything is being done to handle an extremely difficult and tragic situation as well as could be expected. So once again, it's my really very sad duty to extend the condolences of championship auto racing teams, our drivers, our teams, and everybody in the CART family on what is a tragic and sad day for our series. Thank you.
Scott?
First, I want to echo the sentiments. It is with profound sadness that on behalf of California Speedway and International Speedway Corporation that we extend our heartfelt sympathies to the Moore family, to the team members of the Forsythe team, and to Greg's fans around the world. This is the first fatality that has occurred in the three-season history of California Speedway, and without question, this is the saddest day in the history of the Speedway.
Thank you, Scott. We have two representatives from Greg's team with us today, and I'd like to pass the microphone over to them. I know that they have a couple things that they would like to say. Neil Mickelwright, who's Vice President of Operations for Players-Forsythe, and Neil Blanche, who's Director of Marketing for Players. Neil, this is Neil Mickelwright.
Thank you. Obviously, a situation such as today's is one that you can't possibly prepare for. There are no prepared speeches. On behalf of the team and of our partners at Players, we would like to express our sincere sympathies to Greg's family. He was a fine young man, a fine individual, and somebody that had become a very close family member of our team, and we will miss him greatly. We don't have an awful lot more to say than that, other than the fact that obviously as arrangements become made in the very near future, we will be making those known to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil.
I'd just like to say that nobody really prepares you for a day like this. On behalf of Players, I'd like to wish all the Moors all the best, and our condolences go out to them, and our prayers are with them, and we hope that they can recover from this very quickly. It's the nature of motorsport, but it's something you hope that never happens. So I think along with us and yourselves, we all wish the best for the Moors for the next couple of days, for the next couple of moments, and next couple of years. So yeah, I would hope that you respect their time for the next little while. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Andrew, I know you had an additional remark you wanted to make, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, on a separate but related issue, following this tragedy, CART met with its two title sponsors, FedEx and PPG, and actually it was our collective opinion we should cancel our banquet tomorrow night. However, at the specific request of Greg's family, they very much want the banquet to go ahead, and we're going to honor that request. Greg clearly was going to be a future champion in our sport, clearly and unequivocally. And it's the belief of his parents that he would have wanted the banquet to go ahead to honor the champions of a sport which he loved. And we're going to honor that request. The banquet will go ahead. I do intend to make some changes as to how it runs and what we do, but we will honor our champions, and we'll do that in the memory of Greg Moore. Thank you.
We'll open it up to questions at this point. Rick?
Neither doctors. Greg obviously had his accident yesterday, had a broken hand. He was cleared, I understand, Dr. Olby, by you this morning to drive. Can you tell if there was any part of this injury might have played in Greg's inability to handle the car?
No. For everybody's information, he had a fracture of the base of his fourth finger, which really was a minor fracture in nature, and he had 3 lacerations of the finger as a result of a motor scooter accident that he had that morning. The question of him being able to drive was only associated with discomfort that he might feel and the possibility of this fracture being somewhat damaged by the vibration of the car and so forth. So he very much wanted to drive if at all possible, and we have done this in a number of other occasions. Probably the most well-known was with Rick Mears at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway when he broke his ankle very few days before the race, and we fitted a brace on the ankle and tested him in the car, and he competed and actually won the race that year. But in Greg's instance, we did have a brace made for his hands, very small, just to keep the fracture comfortable. We tested him yesterday afternoon, as some of you may know, in the car to see how it went, and he was very excited about it afterwards. He felt fine. We re-examined him at that time. We again saw him in the morning, and by we, I mean Dr. Terry Trammell, who really makes the orthopedic decisions. He's chief orthopedic surgeon, as I think you're all aware, in CART. He and I examined him again this morning. He felt very comfortable, finger looked good. It looked very good on x-ray, so we allowed him to compete in the warm-up. In other words, we had several steps in this process. He ran in the warm-up without any difficulty whatsoever. We again examined him following the warm-up. He was extremely excited about racing, very confident, felt that the hand would give him no difficulty. We feel very strongly that the hand was not related to the cause of the accident.
Okay, I just wanted to note, Dr. Baumann is the medical director for ISC, International Speedway Corporation. Questions? Any additional questions? Rick, you have a follow-up?
Yes, Andrew, was there any thought at any time that the race might be stopped?
No, there was not, and I think, well, first of all, I think, consistent with the wishes of the family, that certainly would not have been what the family wanted. The race was in progress. This did not involve anybody other than a competitor. Obviously, it's grave in itself, but no third parties were involved. And given that, the decision was made to continue with the race. As you know, however, we cancelled all of the post-race ceremonies, which we felt was appropriate, and actually we cancelled various other activities tonight as well. So, no, we felt the appropriate thing was to continue with the race, but to cancel all of the usual things that happened after the event. We think that was the appropriate action to take.
Yeah, Dan.
Neil, can you explain what happened in any way? On television, we saw the car skidding, but
no, quite honestly, at this point, it's a little early, and we would be speculating if we tried to explain or to pinpoint at this time any possible cause for the accident. Obviously, we have significant data that we should be able to retrieve from the vehicle that may give us some indication of what occurred. But up until the time of the accident, the car seemed to be handling correctly and in keeping with the setup parameters that we had.
If I can just add to that, we have impounded the car, which is our normal procedure, and all of the video records through our TV partners are obviously at our disposal. So we will be looking at that with the team to see if we can establish what happened from looking at the car, which is obviously very severely damaged, let me say, but looking at the car and also looking at the video records. But like you, at this time, we've only seen the consequences. We haven't actually seen what actually caused the accident to take place.
Neil, were there any final words from Greg before the accident about the car was acting up, or did he say anything on the radio?
No, immediately prior to the accident, everything has seemed to be correct and nominal. No words or concerns up until that point.
Bruce?
Andrew, not only has the series lost a great driver, but Greg always portrayed a very positive image. You know, he had a great personality. You know, he had star quality all over him. Talk about the loss of a personality in this series.
Sure. I mean, Greg was one of the new young tigers of Champ Car racing. As I said a few minutes ago, clearly and unequivocally a champion of tomorrow. He was everything that is good about this sport. Talented, committed, courageous, fit. Everything that's good, everything that symbolizes what Champ Car racing stands for, I think was embodied in Greg Moore. So it is a very, very profound loss indeed. He's a young man, a great talent, as his dad said, and when I was chatting with him in the hospital, he really loved life, loved having fun. We really was looking forward to the race. He was a competitor. He wanted to race. He really wanted to get in this race today, and obviously the results have been tragic. But he's was one of the breed of young and talented, highly positive drivers who I think is symbolic of our sport in the future.
We'll take one more question.
Doctors tell us what kind of shape he was in. It took a long time for the helicopter to take off, and what was going on at that time?
Sure. He was clearly, from the time of the accident, in very, very critical shape. There are a number of things that have to be done to make the trip to the hospital by helicopter as safe as possible and to increase our chances of being successful. those things take some time. And actually, things went very quickly, and the procedures that needed to be done were done. And I think that we sort of gave him the best chance that we could with the things that we could do in that situation, and certainly with a very unfortunate and heartbreaking result.
Okay.
Craig, is it possible to improve the safety on the speedway, or when you hit the wall, was it possible to do anything to protect the driver in a kind of accident?
Well, I wouldn't at this stage want to speculate as to exactly how this accident occurred. We all saw the aftermath, but I'd want to look very carefully at what occurred, how it occurred, before making any comment. But what I can tell you is this: we're going to look at it in great detail, as you'd expect, and see if there are any lessons to learn from this incident. This does have the appearance, I'm not going to speculate about it, but it has the appearance of being a tragic racing accident. But at this stage, I wouldn't say more than that. I want to get into it with our officials, and obviously with Scott and his representatives to look at this in detail.
It basically tells you all you need to know. Everyone's stunned. Everyone really doesn't know what happened, and it's basically disbelief around the kart world and around the sporting world. Greg Moore today dead at the age of 24 at the last kart race of the season in Fontana, California. We'll have more reaction after the break. Stay with us.
Stuart Ballantyne, through a statement, said the tragic death of Greg Moore has left a hole for all of those who knew him and the millions more who watched this hometown hero as he brought racing to a whole new generation of motorsport fans. Ballantyne went on to say, today our heartfelt sympathy goes out to his family, and while we can offer little else at this moment, I want them to know how much he meant to all of us. Greg Moore lost his life doing what he loved best. His life may have ended at 24, but his legacy will live on.
And Steve Darling joins us now. Truly a tragedy to lose such an exceptional man for racing fans, and of course our hearts go out to the family, Greg's mom Donna and his dad Rick and his wife. Just a really sad day.
It was. Greg Moore meant a lot to people in this community especially. We in the sports department have been following Greg's story for quite some time, since he was an Indy Lights driver, and even before that when he was a kart driver as well, as far as go-karts are concerned. It's a tragic loss, but Greg Moore may have died at the age of 24, but he's accomplished so much in his career. We get more now from Squire Barnes.
Greg Moore was born to race, a child prodigy. Long before he could ever drive in the streets of his hometown of Maple Ridge, he was displaying a natural talent behind the wheel on the go-kart circuits.
I'm going to try and make racing a career. And
as soon as you get out of high school.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as I get out of school.
While still at Pitt Meadows High School, Greg Moore set himself up for a career in racing when he won the USAC Formula 2000 West title at the age of just 17.
Is this about the most exciting moment in your life to this point?
This is one of them, yeah, definitely.
From his earliest days, Greg Moore's dream of being an IndyCar racer was one that was fully supported by his family, especially his father, Rick, a former driver himself who knew the dangers his son faced in his choice of careers.
Downhill skis at 60 miles an hour, and yeah, it is dangerous, but he's also very good. So if he has the opportunity to be the best in the world or the best in North America, you have to give him that chance.
Obviously, my dad's one of my best friends. He's my manager now. He used to be my team owner.
1993, 94, and 95 were the pivotal years for Greg Moore. During that time, he worked his way to the top of the Indy Lights series, earning him a full-time spot on the kart circuit by the age of 21.
Fist in the air, he takes the checkered flag and resets the record as youngest winner of a PPG Kart World Series event.
During his nearly 4 years on the kart circuit, Greg Moore won 5 times with the Players team. Today was to have been his last race for them, having already agreed to join the Roger Penske team for next season. This was a young man who had already accomplished so much in just 24 years, but there was still so much more to do.
this be the day for Greg Moore and the Players team from Canada? I don't think Michael has enough time. Moore thinks he has it won with his fist in the air. He takes the checkered flag and resets the record as youngest winner of a PPG Kart World Series event.
Paul did a great job, carrying the torch into IndyCar. Jacques did, and he left. He's carrying it to Formula One. And, hopefully you can get some young kids in go-karting and in Formula Ford and stuff saying, well, I want to be the next Greg Moore.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to TSN's tribute to Greg Moore, a show which we hope will celebrate his life and provide some comfort to those who were close to Greg and to those who admired him from afar. And it was a life filled with extraordinary moments packed into 24 short years, years that ended all too soon, Sunday afternoon in Fontana, California.
Flags at Fontana were immediately lowered. The race continued, and then, as you might expect, other drivers were devastated when told of Greg Moore's death.
It's so hard because Greg was such a good friend of ours. We've been racing for a while, and we have shared so many good moments inside and outside the racetrack. And this is a tragedy for all of us.
Bob came on the radio and said, I have a very bad news to tell you. And I had no idea. And no idea. And, it's no idea.
It's really bad, really bad. It's happened again this year. Greg was a great guy, I'm really sorry for his family and everything, he didn't deserve to die.
He was just a great young man and had a great future ahead of him, and already had achieved quite a few things in a very short period of time. And I hate this sport when it's like this.
Monday, tributes continued to pour in, including that of Kart president and CEO Andrew Craig.
I think he was a very open individual, he was a great athlete, but very open, very friendly, very approachable, just plain well good to be with. I think everybody liked Greg and liked spending time with him, and you're right, he'd built up a lot of very, very close friendships among the other drivers. He was a member of what's become known as the Kart Rat Pack, a group of young, talented race car drivers who like to race hard on the track, but then enjoy each other's company off the track. Our original thinking had been to cancel the awards banquet tonight in the same way that we cancelled all of the ceremonies after the race. But when I went to see Rick and the rest of Greg's family at the hospital in Linda Loma, Rick was very much of the view that this would have been Greg's wish, that we should continue with the banquet. We've obviously made a fair number of changes to what we're going to do tonight and how we're going to do it, because obviously we think it's important we should recognize and respect the memory of Greg first and foremost.
It helped, other Canadian drivers to think that it was a possibility that someday, we can reach the kart level. And in that perspective, I think just because Greg was really good on the track, it helped all the Canadian driver overall.
The family of Greg Moore spent all day Monday at their home in Maple Ridge dealing with their loss. Late in the day, Greg's father, Rick Moore, gave this written statement. Our entire family is overwhelmed by this tragedy. Losing a child is never easy, no matter what their age. However, we are equally overwhelmed by the genuine kindness and compassion of all those who are sharing this very personal loss with us. Greg touched many lives here at home and throughout the racing world, and I want everyone to know just how much their thoughts and prayers mean to us during this very difficult time. To know that your son was respected and admired by so many means a great deal to us. A private service is now planned for Wednesday in Vancouver for family and close friends.
As you can imagine, this is completely a tragedy for them.
And how are they holding it?
I think, this is going to take some time to get through this. No question, if Greg was as much as part of our family, you can imagine how he is with his own.
The entire town of Maple Ridge also dealt with the loss and sadness of this tragedy on Monday. At his father's car dealership, they have built a shrine. All day, there was a steady stream of friends and fans who brought flowers to pay their respects. Friends like Rob Scheiman, who knew Greg for years and is now only left with his memory.
He was a terrific, terrific person. He was very kind-hearted. He loved the people.
He loved his fans. He would write every autograph there was till there was nobody else left. And he was just a very special person.
Less than a mile down the road is the high school where Greg Moore graduated only 6 years ago.
Well, I was talking to his math teacher just now, and the best memory we have is he's a quiet lad, he says, and he did very well in school, unassuming fellow, very excellent role model for the students here.
The students at Pitt Meadows Secondary paid their respects in their own way by placing a wreath around Greg Moore's 1993 graduation picture.
We've had announcements and everything. Everybody's upset about it because, I mean, he was like one of the only people that's come from Pitt Meadows that's done anything like spectacular or anything, so everybody's upset about it.
For many, it is here where Greg Moore will be remembered, because it's here on the racetrack where his light shone brightest and he reminded all Canadians of what is possible. David Pratt, TSN, Vancouver.
At the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame in Toronto, people started lining up before the doors even opened Monday morning. Inside, a tribute to Greg Moore and a condolence book that everyone wanted to sign.
The first couple hours, I think there was like maybe 10, 15 pages of names and just these wonderful tributes written down. Just make you want to cry here reading some of them.
Canada and the rest of the world will hold you close forever, read one. You will live on in the hearts of every Canadian, read another.
And people at the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame will have till Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time to sign the Book of Condolences. There are other ways you can make your condolences known through the team's head office in Indianapolis, Indiana, or through the family's auto dealership in Maple Ridge, BC. Why the sports bug bites. For some it's hockey, others baseball, football, maybe tennis, swimming. But for Greg Moore, the call to go racing came very early.
Started racing go-karts for fun, and I'd had my Can-Am car in my garage, and when he was a kid, he used to go out there and sit there and make funny little car noises.
And I'd watched him drive, around Westwood, my local track here, and gone to a couple of his races in the States, and, I decided that I wanted to try something like it. And
he got into go-karts, won his first go-kart race.
I was 9.5 years old, or somewhere right around there.
The next year, decided that he would want to run not a professional series, but a very competitive series. And
once I started winning a lot, then I started to realize, well, maybe I have some national talent or something like that.
So he made a commitment to then that go-kart racing wouldn't be fun, that he had to work at it, and he'd go out and just drive around, and he worked very hard at it.
So I went to the national level and started winning there, and then once we'd won a couple nationals, North American championships, we made the decision to go to cars.
At that, we decided that perhaps he had a future in it, and we started out racing 1600, thought we'd be there a couple of years, and he did so well, and we moved up to 2-liter and thought, well, we'll definitely be here for 2 years, and then he won the championship in his first year, and took the opportunity to move out into Indy Lights.
To say the least, Moore's move to Indy Lights was, in a single word, spectacular. 9th as a rookie in 1993, 3 wins and 3rd in points in 94, and in 1995, the championship, and a record 10 wins in 12 races.
It was quite the year. Now, in racing, like all sports, moving from the minors to the majors never guarantees success, especially when you are a 21-year-old rookie, the youngest ever to get a full-time ride in the show. But those with the keen eye predicted big things for Greg when he joined the kart series in 1996. This wasn't just another driver to be stuck in the chorus line of racing. This was a driver destined to be a star.
Only 22 starts in Moore's resume. Could this be the day for Greg Moore and the Players team from Canada? I don't think Michael has enough time. Moore thinks he has it won with his fist in the air. He takes the checkered flag and resets the record as youngest winner of a PPG Kart World Series event. They will have a celebration tonight. What a breakthrough for the Canadian Greg Moore. On to the strand. How much throttle can... And Gugelmin slows. Blundell bursts into the lead as his teammate slows out of fuel. And now Greg Moore has a decision to make. I could have passed him for second. Can I pass him for my second consecutive lead? Bruce McCaw and the team looking on. It's all in the hands of Mark Blundell. He's only got 2 corners to go. Blundell in the middle of the racetrack. Defensive position. Michael Andretti doing the same in what is now third place. And Blundell slows. Moore is in the lead. Blundell is out of fuel. And it has all come apart for the PacWest teammates. Victory. Second straight win for Greg Moore.
And that, of course, was just in his second year of kart racing. You know, for today's driver, racing is so much more than just the time spent on the track. Greg Moore knew that. He had commitments to his team, his sponsors, the media, and the fans, and he met them all. Like the time in Milwaukee, as the story goes, when he borrowed a quarter to use a phone booth to meet a radio interview. No request seemed too much. And when he raced in Canada, the requests came almost 24 hours a day.
Greg Moore is only 22 years old and finds himself in the spotlight more than ever before. He comes to the Molson Indy in Toronto, a 2-time kart race winner, and is second in the driver's standings behind fellow Canadian Paul Tracy. The demands that come with such success are very, very high, especially when you're set to race in front of your home crowd in Toronto.
Things are going all right. You know, we just had a good little press conference there, and a good Cajun chicken breast for lunch. Got me started for the rest of the day, 12:30, and off to Nathan Phillips Square to do some autographs now. We'll go up through here, around.
Year for you. Why has it been so special? What's been the turnaround, the difference?
I mean, it's just a lot of things. You know, it's my second year, and we probably should have won a race last year, but we didn't.
The Hall is the kick-off the Molson Indy, which runs this Sunday.
Guys, we'll be signing autographs over there. I'm sorry, because if I do it now, I got to do it for everybody.
Now,
how are you, sir?
Can I grab? I need 2 minutes for $2 before you go up. You take a toonie over there.
We have time.
Right here.
Thanks.
How are you? Hi, Mark. Good, thanks. How you doing?
Good, busy.
You know, it's just spin them around and stand them up.
Thanks. It's good to be back in Canada. It's you know, you guys have supported me so well ever since I joined Indy Lights in 1993, but it's been a pretty good season for me so far. There you go, sweetie. Hey, Frank, where are we going? As far as the way the season's gone, we won a couple races, and you know, I think that we're going to be okay. Thanks. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Thank you.
There you go.
Same thing?
Hi.
Oh, I could. That'd be great.
One for you. For you. There you go, Dad. Oh, I'm winding down. I am getting to be done. I've got a couple more things to do. We've got to go to Much Music, do a thing for about half an hour now. Or whatever, any hip is good.
What we got to talk about is maybe there's some of the similarities between the sport of racing and rock and roll, because there are some.
Yeah, we're a traveling road show. We're a traveling road show. You know,
it's flashy.
It's flashy. There's a lot of money involved, and a lot of egos involved too. Well, busy day today. Long day. Up at 6:30. A lot of interviews. 600 autographs. And it's just the start of my week. I don't get in the car until Friday. So Wednesday, Thursday, more of this. So thanks for following me along today, and I'll see you guys this race weekend.
Yeah, there are a lot of egos in the sport of auto racing, but Greg Moore rarely showed, if ever, his ego. Now, those who had predicted racing greatness were starting to say, "I told you so." There were overtures from Formula One, but Greg maintained he wanted a kart title before he ventured into F1. 1998 marked his third year in the series.
1998 started with promise. 4 podiums in the first 6 races, including a spectacular win at Rio de Janeiro.
The run to the checkered flag. Greg Moore is going to take his first win of the 1998 season. A brilliantly driven race.
And possibly Moore's biggest career win in Michigan and the US 500.
Greg Moore draws to a couple of car lengths away, and he will win the US
Moore finished a disappointing 5th in the championship, but again started 1999 with optimism and a win at Homestead.
Here comes Greg Moore. The checkered flag is awaiting the Canadian, and he wins the opening round of the 1999 championship. Andretti second, Frank Kitty in a closing third place. We wait for fourth place man to come through.
Now, a show like this could be compared to spending time with the family photo album, or today, I'm showing my age, the VCR and the family videos. In a sense, we are Greg's extended family reliving some memories. So when we searched our video shelf, we found an interview with Greg done by TSN's Glenn Suter prior to the 1998 Vancouver Indy. An interview with a man who loved to race.
Basically, you're a regular kid growing up in Maple Ridge. I mean, a lot of people don't know, but this was a lifelong dream for you, wasn't it?
Definitely. I mean, well, I mean, ever since I was like 2 years old, I've been around race cars. My dad had a race car in the garage that he built. And so, you know, I was 2 years old and I was in there with the steering wheel, doing that on the wheel and pretending to shift gears, making all the race car sounds. And so, I mean, I guess ever since then, but once I got into go-karting, you know, when I was about 9 or 10 years old, then that's probably when I really started to think that's what I wanted to do.
How much was the family influence, your father, you talk about all the time, and his influence? He took time off of racing when you were born. You know, you grew up with him in this house. How much of support did he give you throughout the years?
Tons. I mean, anything I needed, I could have. You know, if it came to racing, you know, needed a new set of tires, go get a new set of tires. Needed this gear, he'd go get that gear. And I think that's one reason why, you know, you look at Paul Tracy, you know, Dario Franchitti, you know, Alan Jr., anything that they needed throughout their racing career, they had it because that's what their, you know, their fathers or their sponsors were able to just keep giving to them what they needed.
Did you, you know, away from the racing end of it, did you, you know, was it a regular childhood in this neighborhood for Greg Moore and his father growing up, or was everything always focused on the cars?
No, it was pretty regular. I mean, I played hockey up until I was 14. You know, I was a AAA goalie in Burnaby at the Burnaby Winter Club up until I was 14 years old. So, you know, I mean, hockey and then racing.
Street hockey out on the road here and stuff?
Didn't play much street hockey. You know, I was a goalie, so it gave you bad habits, that's for
sure. So did Dad, you know, was Dad, you know, equally happy whether or not you were on the rink or in the garage?
Yeah, when I was 14, he made me make a decision between one of the two. He said, I'll support you, I'll buy you new pads whenever you need them, or whatever. But you got to make a decision, one or the other, hockey or racing. And I think I chose the right one now.
How much does he get nervous when you race, or does he talk to you about that?
He doesn't talk to me about it, just because it's, you know, I know that he's really nervous. I've seen TSN actually did a video of outtakes from my first win in Milwaukee in 1997, and they showed him pacing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Then they showed other guys in the team. They came back to my dad, and he's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So, I mean, you just see what he does. I mean, because I've never seen it before. Never see what he does during a race. So it's pretty funny that, you know, he walks back and forth, and then he knows that I'm going to come by, so he stops, sees what the time was on the stopwatch, starts pacing again, and he always ends up at the exact same spot with the stopwatch. Back and forth.
Do you think it's more concern, I guess it's a mixture, but is it more concern about how successful you are and I mean, he's been in the business, so, or do you think it's just, hey, I'm Dad and I'm concerned with my son here?
I think it's both. I mean, it's business because he is my manager, but it's also, you know, a father being nervous about his son out there at 200 miles an hour. I mean, I'd be nervous, for sure.
The pressures, you know, from the outside looking in, seem intense, but to you, it's really just sort of self-inflicted, and other than that, you're living out your dream, aren't you?
Well, that's just it. I mean, I'm an extremely competitive person, and I always want to be first. If I can't be first, I want to be second. And, you know, I can't accept 6th or 7th or 8th place. It's difficult for me, you know, unless something has happened, you know, the car isn't right there, and I feel that I've driven the best that I can, and we still finish 5th. Well, then that way, you know, I'm not pleased with it because we're 5th, we're not first, but, you know, I still did my job today, you know, that way. But, you know, the pressure is immense that I just put on myself because I always want to win. And I'm always trying to figure out how are you going to be pushing the car to the limit a little bit more through this turn. Can you maybe go over the limit a little bit and still, hold it for 1 or 2 laps for that qualifying lap, But, like you said, it is my lifelong dream, and here I am.
Do you ever catch yourself kind of in the house here, looking in the mirror, going, "I can't believe this is happening to me"?
Not so much anymore. I mean, but initially when I first made it to IndyCar in '96, a little bit last year, you just, wow, you look at pictures of me when I was like 10 years old, and it's just like, wow, here's this kid who made it.
In the past, it was the technology that seemed to win races. It's starting to come the other way, isn't it, that now the driver is becoming more and more important every year?
Well, for sure. I mean, because in our series, it's so competitive and so close. We race on, tracks that vary. You go from super speedway to small oval, street course, road course. You've got all these different circuits, and the thing about it is that because we've been running on them for quite a while now, everyone knows generally what kind of setup we're going to have. We're going to go there and we're going to have this and this and this, and sure, you try different tweaks and stuff like that, and that's why it's getting so competitive, because most people's cars are quite similar. Hondas are different than the Mercedes, Goodyears are different than Firestones, but the setup of the car are probably fairly close. So if a driver can be 0.2 of a second quicker than another driver because he goes through a turn a little bit quicker, he's worth it all.
How do you explain to someone who's never sat behind the wheel of one of these cars what it's like, the intensity, to go around a corner at 140 miles an hour and hit the straightaway and just take off? And I mean, how do you describe that?
For a lot of people, I think the best way is, the ride called the ejection seat. Where you're you're on 2 bungee cords and you're in this, the big, and that feeling that you get when they let the bungees go and you get shot. Well, imagine that, but being pushed backwards. Most people have been in a car that when the driver stands on it, you're going to get pushed back into the seat. Well, most say a street car will go 0 to 60 in just over 5 seconds. A good quick street car. Well, our cars go 0 to 60 in less than a second. I mean, it's just incredible, the acceleration that we have. But the acceleration is impressive, but the most impressive thing about our cars is the braking. Because we go from 180 miles an hour down to 60 in less than about 2 seconds probably, less than 2.5 seconds. And so the forces that are pulling you forward as you're doing it, your neck, the rest of your body, I mean, it's impressive for sure.
And I can imagine when you're talking about the athlete that's required to be able to do that, these are split-second decisions that you're making. At 140 miles an hour, I can imagine you don't have a whole lot of time to second-guess yourself as to when to brake, when to turn, whatever.
That's for sure. I mean, at 200 miles an hour, we're covering a football field a second. So, I mean, you can relate to that, how long a football field is. I mean, we're doing that every second at 200 miles an hour. So, you're coming up to a turn, and kind of a braking point. You've got to say they put brake markers up, which they're called. They're the numbers, as you see, they start at 1 right at the turn and they go back away from it. Gives you a reference where to brake. And you're coming up to it at such a quick speed. If you're off by, a split second, you're off by 30 or 40 yards. It's a lot.
And that's where these are athletes behind the wheels of these cars.
Yeah, I mean, we average anywhere from 160 to 180 beats per minute of heart rate. You gotta be in good shape to be able to do that for 2 hours.
You also have and I'm sure it's something that you guys don't talk about. I know as a football player you never talk about injuries, but you always have this is a dangerous sport, and could be.
Well, it's a dangerous sport, but I think if you're thinking about that, it's time to hang up the blades. It's time to hang it up. If you're thinking about, oh, I don't want to, I'm a little worried about this because I might crash, you're done. It's over.
Is there something about race car drivers that you talk about the need for speed when you watch Tom Cruise and all that, like the adrenaline rush that you must go through in these races you must just feed off it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's not only, the racing is fun, but to me, just driving the race car is the best part. I've had some of my best days being out on a test, practicing. because you can push the car to limit, lap record times. And that, to me, is just so much fun because it's not about the press, it's not about the notoriety or the celebrity status or anything like that. To me, it's all about going out there and driving the race car.
How competitive is it to push that envelope when you're talking about can I push the car that much more and get away with it? Where's the fine line and how do you draw that?
It's just a feeling that you have. You've probably heard of a seat of the pants feel. When you're out there driving, because you're strapped into the car so well, you're kind of one with the car and you can feel what it's doing. Through the seat, through the steering wheel, and you just kind of guess, I guess. You're kind of out there and, well, I think it'll do it. I think the car will do it. And there's times when it doesn't. There's times when you spin off the track and hit the wall, or you just spin off into the gravel or anything like that. And you've reached your limit. You can't go any faster than that through that turn.
Once again, if you wish to offer condolences to Greg Moore's family, there are a couple of ways to do it. One is through the team's head office in Indianapolis, Indiana. The other is through the family's auto dealership in Maple Ridge, BC. So what do you say at a time like this? Well, as someone who has lost both his parents in the last 3 years, death is never easy, whatever the age and whatever the circumstance. And no doubt, as much as Greg and his family knew that this just might happen, there is no preparing for it. No one ever is. So what can I say to his father, Rick, and family, except that you did raise one fine young man. Even in your deepest sorrow, you should be very proud. Greg was his father's son. But maybe the best thing to say at a time like this is simply, thank you. Thank you, Greg, for some wonderful racing memories. Thank you for making us proud to be Canadians every time that you raced and every time you stood on the top step of the podium. And thank you for being a perfect ambassador in that understated Canadian way. Yeah, that's it. The best thing to say at a time like this is thank you, Greg Moore.
CART held its annual awards banquet Monday night at the request of the family of Greg Moore. The 24-year-old was killed in a crash at the Marlboro 500 on Sunday. CART CEO Andrew Craig paid tribute to Moore before ceremonies began Monday night.
Supremely talented, successful, clearly a champion of tomorrow. But Greg's success was more than just as a race car driver. He was well liked by his peers and enjoyed an enthusiasm for life that made him one of the founding members of CART's infamous Rat Pack.
Greg was a very good friend of all of ours and part of our family. Greg's memory and everything that made him such a great guy will live on in all of us forever. And one thing that I have learned with my years is about loss, is that we do need to take the time to grieve for him and his family.
In Moore's hometown of Maple Ridge, signs that used to boast of his accomplishments now had messages saying goodbye.
We were watching the race yesterday on the TV when we heard about it, and I just felt so bad for the family. I didn't know how to reach out to them. I'm sorry, I'm really emotional about this still. I did not know how to reach out to them, and this is just my way personally of being able to reach out, and the management here was very kind enough to let me do this.
A tribute to Moore was set up at his dad Rick's car dealership, where fans turned out to pay their respects.
And I was just disbelieved when I saw what happened. I was just touched me real hard. This kid does not deserve this. He was
just promising star.
I'm really sad, you know. He was one of the nicest guys I've met. You know, you see him, walk up, shake his hand, give you an autograph, ask how you're doing. You know, after a race, if he lost, he'd say sorry about the loss or congratulations on the win. He'd thank you.
Moore was one of Maple Ridge's shining stars, along with Larry Walker and Cam Neely. At 24 years old and with 5 career wins, there was no limit to how successful he could have been on the kart circuit. There was even talk of him jumping to F1 in the future. But Moore wasn't just an outstanding athlete.
He was a hometown hero. Here was a young man who had a dream, and his father worked hand in hand with him to achieve that dream. And maybe that's part of the story that other people don't see, because they didn't grow up in town and they didn't see that. But you have a father who's totally devoted to his son and helping his son achieve his goals and his objectives. But in the process, the father keeping the son grounded as he achieved tremendous success.
Greg had a lot to say about what a great father his father had been, and his father Rick had talked a lot about what a great son he was, and that's one of the messages we want to get across to people, that he's more than just an athlete. You know, he's a person, and you know, it's difficult because it's only been a day, and I don't think anyone can still believe what happened, even though they've seen it. So.
It would be impossible and really in poor taste to suggest that we in a 2-minute television story can sum up the feelings of a heartbroken town, a province, and a country. So we will let this memorial at Maple Ridge Chrysler speak for itself.